Back from the moon at 25,000 miles an hour, with just about as much trouble as you or I might have backing the car into the garage. That was the perfect ending this morning to a voyage that will very probably live forever.
Helicopter number 66 with astronauts Borman, Lovell, and Anders. Here comes astronaut Borman and Lovell and Anders standing on the steps, and a great cheer goes up from the sailors out here on the flight deck. All of them looking in very good condition, needing a shave, of course, shaking hands with Ben James. There's Captain Lovell shaking hands with Ben James, walking slowly down the red carpet, accompanied by John Stonecipher and Ben James, the three astronauts. Lovell having a very noticeable beard. Frank Borman looks as if he is shaved. All three salute. Captain Fifield is at the microphone.
On behalf of the entire Yorktown crew, a most hearty welcome aboard and congratulations on a tremendously successful flight. Colonel Borman, would you care to say a few words to the crew?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Well, we're just very happy to be here, and we appreciate all your efforts, and I know you had to stay out here over Christmas, and that made it tough. Jim and I always seem to fly in December. We made it home before Christmas in '65, but we can't tell you much how much we really appreciate you being here and how proud it is for us to participate in this event, because thousands of people made this possible, and I guess we're all just part of the group. Thank you very much.
Captain Fifield presents Yorktown caps to Colonel Borman, Captain Lovell, and Major Anders. Captain Fifield shaking hands with Colonel Borman. Colonel Borman looks as if he has grabbed a quick shave on the way back. At least there's no indication that he needs a shave in the sense that Lovell and Anders do. Walking slowly down the flight deck now, all of them wearing their Yorktown caps.
Go ahead.
With the scrambled eggs on the front, scrambled eggs, indicating their rank. There goes the warning klaxon. And down goes elevator number 3 with astronauts Borman, Lovell, and Anders back from space and safe now aboard the aircraft carrier Yorktown. And down there on the hangar deck is Ron Nesson.
The elevator has just reached the hangar deck level, and the three astronauts are walking through the roped-off area wearing their white coverall uniforms. Borman does seem to be clean-shaven. Cameramen and photographers following them, Ben James of the space agency with them, other space officials.
At Mission Control in Houston, a sudden bursting out of stars and stripes and big, strong cigars, perhaps reflecting what Frank Borman meant when he radioed, "The moon isn't made of green cheese, it's made of American cheese." The Yorktown fished the space-burned hull of Apollo 8 out of the Pacific, and about this time came the first and only disaster of the entire mission. President Johnson put in a call to the astronauts, only the astronauts weren't there.
And my thoughts this morning went back to more than 10 years ago in the Pedernales Valley when we saw Sputnik racing through the skies, and we realized that America had a big job ahead of it. It gave me so much pleasure to know that you men have done a large part of that job. So we rejoice that you're well, and we send you congratulations from all of your fellow countrymen and from all peace-loving people in the world. Well done.
Later, the astronauts did hear a tape of the president's message. This afternoon, NASA announced that the next step, Apollo 9, which will test the long-overdue lunar landing module in Earth orbit, is to be launched February 28th. Meanwhile, world reaction continues to pour in over the triumphant flight of Apollo 8, from 10 Soviet astronauts praising the precision and courage of the flight. from Pope Paul, expressing the hope that all the world might benefit from Apollo 8, and of course from 3 wives and 11 children, the families of Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, and Bill Anders.
This is Warren. The flight's over. What's your reaction to the end of this flight and to this flight?
I'm still speechless. Just tremendous relief. It's just truly the happiest day. I just can't explain the happiness.
What were your emotions during this re-entry?
Not as intense nor great as the burnout of lunar orbit I might have had. That was the worst time for me.
Well, all I can say is that there is not one word in the dictionary that can describe how I feel today.
With your cheers in the house?
Oh, many, many cheers. It's just been marvelous, and I am so proud for our country that we could accomplish, or my husband could accomplish this mission. Yes.
How did you feel during that lunar orbit?
I was apprehensive. I have to admit that. I wouldn't be normal if I didn't admit it.
How did you feel when they came out of it?
I was elated. There really is a Santa Claus, and my husband said it, and it sounded marvelous.
I can't imagine anything more exciting at this moment.
What were your reactions at the re-entry?
At the re-entry, I couldn't believe it was going so perfectly, and I couldn't believe that they actually sighted that thing from the ship in the dark. I feel very humbled at the success of all this flight. I feel very full of gratitude for the people that have worked so hard on this flight, and also for the people all over the country and even all over the world that have prayed for the success and sent all their good wishes to the crew.
Direct from our newsroom in New York, in color, this is the CBS Evening News, with Harry Reasoner substituting for Walter Cronkite.
To a skier, it's a foot of snow. To a boxer, it's a fast KO. To a sheriff, it's which way they went. To a smoker, it's a Kent. The taste of Kent. The taste of Kent. The taste of Kent. More taste, fine tobacco. To a jockey, it's a derby win. To a traveler, it's a welcome into a landlord. It's a monthly rent. To a smoker, it's a Kent. The taste of Kent. The taste of Kent. The taste of Kent. More taste, fine tobacco.
If you smoke a filter cigarette, try the taste of Kent.
In his congratulations to the astronauts, President Johnson told them that the hotline had been used to keep Moscow informed of their flight. He said the Russians enthusiastically welcomed the offer of such information. The Soviet interest also was apparent in the unparalleled news coverage given of the space flight. The news agency TASS swiftly reported the step-by-step return to Earth, and Moscow television broadcast a videotape report. Mr. Johnson also spoke today of his own future in a meeting with a group of educators at the White House.
And I'm going home to really do 3 things, and only 3 things. They've got me building empires and sailing ships and flying planes and leading astronauts and everything else. But I'm just not going to do any of those things. I'm not going to retire either. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to be lazy and enjoy being with Lady Bird for a while. And she'll get tired of me before very long all the time, but we're going to sleep late and not be worried about what may be said here or there. But just take things easy. Then the next thing I'm going to do is just read and read and read and read. I got enough books Christmas. I got 7 volumes last night on George Washington. And I'd feel better this morning if I hadn't plowed through one of them as long as I did. But he had some of the same feelings about the presidency that I have. And you like to find a fellow that agrees with you. So I'm going to read. And then when I get through reading, I hope to be able to do some writing and some teaching. Next year, I'm going to make relatively few appearances, 6 or 7, 2 or 3 at the university, and Rice Institute, and San Marcos, and maybe 1 or 2 up in this country, this area. But a great deal of my time is going to be spent with young people. And I'm going to try to inspire them and stimulate them and create in them a desire to be teachers or preachers or public servants, because I think that you can get a satisfaction in those endeavors that you can't find in many others.
At an impromptu news conference before leaving for Texas, Mr. Johnson expressed a longing for a Vietnam truce and progress toward peace before he leaves office. He said that negotiator Cyrus Vance, who returned to Paris today, expressed the hope that when he got back there, progress could be made in peace talks. In spite of Mr. Johnson's hopeful comments, there was little optimism in Paris, where the South Vietnamese insisted again today on two-sided negotiations. In a strongly worded statement, they said they're not going to back down from that position, and further, they're not going to agree to any military or political compromises with the National Liberation Front once the talks begin. The U.S. command in Saigon said today that ground fighting throughout South Vietnam had tapered off considerably in the last 24 hours, with no major action reported. As one American officer put it, it looks as if we got more action during the ceasefire than we've had after it. Communist China exploded its 8th nuclear device today in the Lop Nor region of Xinjiang province, a desert area about 450 miles from the Soviet border. U.S. officials say the blast equaled about 3 million tons of TNT and was probably some kind of hydrogen bomb, which would make it China's first successful hydrogen explosion in 18 months.
You people who want hours of relief from minor pains of arthritis and muscular aches, how many pain relievers do you know of that give you a second dose of pain relief before the first wears off? Measurin does, the first pain reliever with a built-in second dose. Measurin contains a double dose of aspirin in timed release form, so you take it just once every 8 hours instead of every 4. Convenient timed release Measurin with a built-in second dose for a long-lasting pain relief.
When you have acid indigestion, every second counts. So count on instant-acting Phillips tablets. Phillips tablets go to work in seconds. With one of the fastest stomach settlers ever discovered, each small Phillips tablet neutralizes more excess stomach acid than the leading antacid tablet that comes in a roll. So for fast relief from acid-upset stomach, when every second counts, count on instant-acting Phillips tablets.
The Navy disclosed today that 6 additional Pueblo crewmen were wounded when North Korea seized their ship, raising the announced casualty toll to 1 dead and 10 wounded. The spokesman also said that the captain, Commander Lloyd Booker, now is under medical care apart from the other survivors because of a respiratory infection and physical and emotional exhaustion. Today, the men of the Pueblo sent congratulations to the Apollo astronauts for what was called tremendous achievements and triumphant return. Josh Darsa reports from San Diego.
Crewmen from the Pueblo were as interested as anyone else in today's dramatic return to Earth by the Apollo 8 astronauts. They devoted full attention to television's coverage of this morning's splashdown. Then, muster, and back to the Navy mold of doing things with exercises, just before today's debriefings began. The purpose of the debriefings was described to newsmen by Navy legal officer Captain Gale Krause.
The sole and exclusive purpose of this debriefing is to obtain intelligence information. It has no other purpose. The intelligence debriefings are strictly an informal fact-finding venture. They are necessary in order that our government can determine the maximum information in all the areas of intelligence.
Captain Krause said that none of the statements made by Pueblo crew members during debriefings would be used for or against them at the Naval Court of Inquiry, which convenes in about 2 weeks. From Captain Krause's statements, it is obvious the Navy is treating the Pueblo affair with extreme sensitivity. Josh Darsa, CBS News, San Diego.
Greek authorities today filed murder charges against 2 Arab terrorists for yesterday's attack against an Israeli El Al jetliner at the Athens airport, which left 1 person dead and 2 others wounded. The Greek cabinet is to decide whether the men will be tried by a civil or military court. If convicted, the men could be sentenced to death. The State Department said today the United States will sell 50 F-4 Phantom jets to Israel for $200 million. Some of that cost will be covered by the United States in the form of loans. CBS News has learned that the deal actually was concluded several weeks ago, but the announcement was held up to lessen unfavorable international reaction. The agreement is still subject to final approval by President-elect Richard Nixon's administration. The State Department confirmed today that 8 U.S. military cargo planes will be provided for the emergency airlift of food supplies into Biafra. 4 of the planes will go to American voluntary agencies taking part in the operation, the others to the International Red Cross. The planes will have civilian crews. An Ozark airliner with 66 persons aboard crashed today while taking off from Sioux City, Iowa. No one was killed and only 36 were injured, none seriously. The DC-9 belly landed in more than a foot of snow, and one passenger said that's what saved us. There was no really hard jar, he said, just a nice floating stop. Said another passenger, it made me a firm believer in seat belts.
With Certs, the delicious candy mint that stops bad breath. Certs refreshes your taste, freshens your breath as no other candy mint can.
Certs, the delicious candy mint.
The perfect breath mint, too.
Certs is two mints in one. There's no other candy mint like Certs, because Certs contains a sparkling drop of Redson, the miracle breath purifier that stops bad breath. With Certs, if she kissed you once, she'll kiss you again. You can be certain with Certs. Certs in assorted delicious flavors.
Conservation has become a major concern of many Americans in recent years. Across the nation, there are campaigns to clean up the air and the waters and preserve the land. One of the targets of these concerned conservationists is pesticides, of which more than 1 billion pounds is produced each year by some 10,000 manufacturers. In Wisconsin, a group now is making the most serious legal challenge so far to the best known of the pesticides, DDT. Robert Shackney reports.
The question being argued before the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources has implications that go well beyond the boundaries of this one Midwestern state. The pesticide DDT is itself on trial. The issue, whether or not this cheapest and most commonly used form of chemical insecticide is in fact so dangerous a poison that its further use should be substantially restricted or prohibited. DDT has been a part of our lives now for 25 years. But it's argued in this court that DDT does a lot more than just kill harmful bugs, that it persists in dangerous form for years after it's first applied, that it pollutes the atmosphere, our water supply, and the fatty tissues of all living things.
And ready to give testimony against the pesticide, a phalanx of scientists, mostly young, from schools and laboratories all about the country. Among them, Dr. Charles Worcester, biochemist and assistant professor of biological sciences from the State University of New York, who argues that DDT should be banned outright.
My point here is to emphasize the point that there cannot be the controlled use of an uncontrollable compound. There's no possible way to do it. There's no use in talking about indiscriminate or discriminate use of DDT, or reading the label or not reading the label, or being an expert or being or not knowing what you're doing. The only thing that matters is whether you use it or not.
And when DDT is used intensively to kill insects, this also is what happens. Robins and other songbirds found dead or dying on the Michigan State University campus in East Lansing, victims, university scientists claim, of DDT. And the scientists further argue, no bird is safe anywhere. Even penguins in the Antarctic, where no DDT has ever been sprayed, show traces of the chemical, presumably picked up from the fish they eat. Closer to home, DDT is said to be killing off the eggs of the coho salmon in Lake Michigan. Witnesses are testifying that DDT kills in many ways. They described how the chemical interferes in the reproductive cycle of the great predatory birds, like the sparrowhawk. The scientific attack on DDT is by no means being left unchallenged. On the other side of the table, attorney Lewis McLean, hired by and representing the agrochemical industry, the companies that manufacture DDT and other pesticides.
It has taken us a number of years to find out what's happening, and we now have a very good idea what's happening.
And you get your idea from laboratory studies by injecting massive amounts into test animals.
That's not what I said.
From one study.
That's not what I said. That's a complete distortion of what I said.
And you disagree.
I completely disagree with your...
And you've mentioned another study in which you say someone has assumed what their environmental level of a great number of chemicals might be.
We know what the environmental level is.
I think they have an opportunity.
We know what the levels are, and they have duplicated those levels specifically for that reason.
McLean cross-examines every hostile witness, and in his defense of DDT, he has the support of orchardists, farm organizations, and a number of government agencies involved in pest control. When his turn comes, says McLean, he'll produce his own scientific witnesses to defend DDT. To a large degree, the argument is being shaped by lawyers. McLean on his side of the table, and on the other side, Victor Yanacone, unpaid counsel for the Environmental Defense Fund, the organization of the anti-DDT scientists.
Basically, the case against DDT is quite simple. We will show that DDT is highly toxic to animal and bird species as well as lower organisms, and that in addition to direct toxicity, there are indirect effects and sublethal effects which include interference with sexual activity, interference with hormone balance, and the induction of certain enzymes in the body which cause the breakdown of complex steroid chemicals and which thereby affect the functioning of the organism. We will show that this occurs throughout the animal kingdom, in particular in vertebrates, and that recent studies have shown strong indications that this may be occurring even in man.
Well, these conclusions are false, and we will bring in expert witnesses in these various fields to demonstrate that these conclusions are false. Any material can be misused, but to state that the proper use of DDT through these 20 years or 25 years has decimated wildlife populations simply is at odds with what we all should be able to observe.
Defenders of DDT argue that the critics are laboratory theoreticians who know little about practical agriculture. They point to the soil sample surveys the Department of Agriculture undertakes to guard against dangerous levels of pesticide contamination.
The government has repeatedly issued orders to the Food and Drug Administration stating that the food of the country is completely safe. In fact, we enjoy the purest and most wholesome food in the world in this country.
So as far as you are concerned, you represent a case that simply just doesn't admit that DDT is guilty of any damaging effects.
We say that if DDT is used, and this is true, if DDT or other pesticides are used as they are intended to be used, there is no injury.
If we win in Wisconsin, it should be a warning to the conscience of the agrochemical industry, which is certainly defending this matter, that the time has come to withdraw DDT from outdoor use.
It'll be well into next year before this case is finally settled. The defenders of DDT have yet to produce their witnesses. They won't until January. And then any final decision is almost surely to be appealed to the courts. Still, when all the arguing is over, the rules governing the use of pesticides may be very different as a result of what's happened in this room. For if DDT is ruled to be unsafe in Wisconsin, its use anywhere else would be hard to justify. Robert Jackney, CBS News, Madison, Wisconsin.
The cost of living rose 0.4% last month, and the government predicts the increase for all of 1968 will be the highest in 17 years. One bright spot last month was a drop in food prices, but the costs of housing, clothing, transportation, and medical care were up sharply. Prices closed lower on the New York Stock Exchange today on a volume of about 11.25 million shares. The exchange index was down 19 cents. Ruth Eisman Shear, a fugitive in the Georgia kidnapping of Barbara Jane Mackle, was placed on the 10 most wanted list today. Miss Shear is the first woman on the list since the FBI started it almost 19 years ago. 283 men have made it.
I'm a denture wearer and a dental technician, but I drink 8 cups of coffee a day. I know how coffee stains dentures, so I won't use anything but Polident now.
People keep coming back to Polident because no tablet, powder, or paste gives them the cleaning satisfaction of Polident. No wonder dentists surveyed recommend Polident over all other leading brands combined. No wonder denture wearers keep coming back to Polident.
You know, this could be a problem for us denture wearers if it weren't for Polygrip, the modern cream adhesive. What does Polygrip do that powder adhesives can't? Well, say this glass is your denture. Powders can leave gaps, weak spots. Your dentures can let go. But not with Polygrip. No gaps, no letting go, no embarrassment. Try something solid for a change. Get Polygrip. Then go have yourself an ear of corn.
Winton Blunt, the Alabamian chosen to be Postmaster General in the Nixon cabinet, had trouble with his tongue today at a news conference in Washington. He was asked about the future of the Republican Party in the South.
Well, that's one thing I'm very happy to talk to you about because, number one, I think it's growing. I think it has been growing. I think it's going to continue to grow. I was asked the other day, how is the Republican Party going to grow? Where are you going to get the Republicans? Well, I think you're going to get them from the Democrat Party. Just as I was a Democrat and became a Republican, and this is the movement in the South. If you look at it over the years, it's people leaving the Democrat Party going into the Republican Party. You don't see any movement of people leaving the Democrat Party going into the Republican Party. And you can chart this over the years, and it's an increasing phenomenon.
You mean vice versa?
Well, if I said it wrong, I do mean vice versa, but you have them leaving the Democrat Party, to make it clear, going into the Republican Party, and none of them leaving the Democrat Party going into the Republican. Okay, I give up.
That's the news. This is Harry Reisner. I'll be here next week for Walter Cronkite, who will be on vacation. Good night.